Hi, I'm Jim from Jarvis Products. I'm going to show you how to disassemble and assemble 50D. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is take out the pivot pin between the blade and the coupling. There's a roll pin that goes in here, which I've already taken out. You just take a small punch, tapping a hammer, tap that out. It comes out pretty easy. And just take a punch, tap in here, take out the pivot pin. Okay, next I'm going to take off the 3 bolts and the hanger to hold the blades onto the tool. Okay, next you have 2 set screws on each side holding the hanger on. Remove those. Pull out your hanger. Now I have another roll pin in here. In order to get this assembly apart, you have to drive out that roll pin. Punch in there, small punch. Pull off that part. Hanger assembly. Lift off the side handle and bracket. And you can lift off your blades. And the other bracket on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to disassemble the cylinder. First thing, clamp it in the vise. You have to loosen this back nut in order to get off the rear handle. And pull that off. Okay, next I'm going to disassemble the cylinder. Now what I do is I usually take a rag, put it in the vise, and the flats on the bottom of the cylinder, put in the vise, tighten down on that. Makes it easier to get the top cover off. First I'm going to take off the, actually I'll face it this way so you can see it. I'm going to take off this fitting. Okay, I'm going to loosen up the cap, and then I'm going to remove this from the back to disassemble the cylinder. Loosen that up. Pull that off. All right, now I'm going to remove the piston from the coupling. Need a 14mm hex head. Loosen that. And that cylinder is disassembled. Now I'm going to reassemble it. Spray the coupling down with primer. Put that aside, let it dry. Take your cap. Inside you're going to have two rings. The bottom one's going to be an O-ring, the top is a backup ring. You want to put plenty of grease on those rings. That way they seat in there good and the cylinder doesn't leak. some grease on inner bushing. Take your piston, put it through, just tap it. Just like that. Sprayed a little more primer inside the threads in the piston. 262 Loctite. Screw these together. Put that back in the vise, coupling in the vise. 14 millimeter. Tighten that down good. Okay, next I take the back of the cylinder, put that back in the vise. Some grease in the inside. And some never sees on these threads. Take some more grease, put them on the rings, O-rings, on the piston. That on like that. Sometimes you might have to hit it with a mallet to get it to pop in there. Sometimes it just pushes down. There you go. Okay. Take this, screw that down. You'll feel it bottom out. You'll know when it's tight. Okay. Now this is the bottom of the cylinder here. On the coupling, it's at a slight angle. You want to make sure that the angle is going downwards. And then where your roll pin is, the hole for the roll pin will be on this side of the cylinder. Okay, next, take your fittings, Teflon tape, tighten that down facing toward the back. Okay, next, back in the vise, put it on the fittings in the vise. Primer on the back, threads, and slide over your rear handle. 262 Loctite on this nut. Screw that on there. Tighten that down. And take your rear fitting, Teflon tape. And that's your cylinder all assembled. Okay, after you have your blades together, you have a nut on each side and two flat metal plates which are used to lock down the nuts. So what I do is I'll put them in the vise starting one side at a time on one of the flats and crimp these down. That locks the nut in place. Just want to have just a little bit of drag on the blades. You know, you make sure you tighten them on each side a little bit till you get the proper amount of, just a little bit, a little drag on them. Okay, then what I do is I take the vise, take off the soft jaws. Either side, it doesn't matter which one you start on, just find the flats on the nut, which will lock the nut in place so it doesn't move. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over and do the same on the other side. Just want to make sure you get it on the flats on the nut. And that's it. Those nuts are locked in place. This is what I folded over in the vise to keep the nut from moving on the flats, both sides, like that. Okay, now I'm going to assemble the blades to the 50D. Take the plate with no handle on it, goes like that. Take your blades, lay them on top of there, and the plate with the handle goes on top of that. Take your bolts, one in there, one to the left of it, one on the bottom. This one doesn't get a bolt. This will be where the hanger goes. Now I'm going to flip the tool up, put a little grease in the back where the hanger goes. Put your hanger in. Line up the two holes to put in the roll pin. Take a punch on this, goes in pretty easy. Just tap that in. Make sure that pivots. Take never sees, put them on the threads on the blade bolts. Your socket, adjustable, tighten these up. Tighten those down. And next you put your hanger on. You have your two set screws. 262 Loctite on these. On the wrong side. You want to line up the holes on the hanger, the holes on the end of the bracket. Okay, after you got those tight, okay, what I'm going to do now is put the pivot pin into the coupling and the blade. Tap this till you line that up. The hole goes in last to line up with the hole on the coupling for the roll pin. Line up the hole, tap that in there. It's much easier to put the roll pin from the bottom than it is from the top. Tap that in, small punch, nice and easy because it bends easily. And that's it. That's an assembled 50D.